research and teaching focus on forest-based traditions and lifeways in Central Appalachia, the socio-ecological impacts of fossil fuel extraction on rural communities, and just energy transitions. Professor Bell has conducted extensive research in Central Appalachian communities, including her most recent projects, which include an ethnography of Appalachian wild harvesting traditions and economies, an examination of inequities in the Appalachian wild harvested herbal supply chain, leading the creation of the Forest Botanicals Region Living Monument, which celebrates the historical and present day relationships and traditions that a diversity of Appalachian peoples have long held with the medicinal herbs and wild foods of the Appalachian forest understory. And her talk is the Forest Botanicals Region Living Monument, Transforming Perceptions of the Appalachian Coalfields. So thanks, Shannon.
Thank you for having me here today. So I'm going to try to share my presentation here. All right, does everything look good?
It's small.
It's small. Oh,
no, maybe not.
Oh, it's okay.
Is
It's
it the
good.
full?
No,
it's good now.
It's
You're
good
on
now.
full screen.
It's full screen. Okay. You don't see, again, don't see my secret notes.
No, you're all safe.
Okay. Okay. Well, thank you again for having me here today. And I'm excited to chat with you about this project that I've been working on for the past year and a half or so. That's the Forest Botanicals Region Living Monument, and it's got, I'll talk about this, but it's got a few different components. But the physical component of the monument is in Wise County in Norton, Virginia. So hopefully you all sometime will want to take a trip out there. And actually, one of the members of our advisory board is from the High Knob Master Naturalist group, Beth Walker. So there may be some connections that we can make between these two groups. So the forests of Central Appalachia are among the most biodiverse ecosystems in the world. The flora and fauna of this mountain region have served as a commons resource that has sustained societies for millennia. Scores of medicinal herbs and forest foods like black cohosh, golden seal, American ginseng, trillium, mayapple, Solomon seal, ramps, and pawpaws all grow wild in the Appalachian woodland forest understory. In fact, about 50% of the medicinal plants in the multi-billion-dollar North American herbal supply chain are native to the Appalachian Mountains, and a large share of the herbal products that are found on the shelves of natural food stores and pharmacies throughout the world are harvested from the Central Appalachian forests of far southwest Virginia, southern West Virginia, eastern Kentucky, and East Tennessee. But Central Appalachia is not known for its bountiful forest herbs. It's known for coal. Central Appalachia has long been reduced to the coal fields, which is used as kind of an all-consuming label that's used in discourse about the region, stretching from economic development reports to academic publications to television news stories to the names of local health centers and highways. But characterizing Central Appalachia in this way obscures the fact that the carbon resource that's defining this region is buried beneath one of the most biodiverse forest ecosystems on the planet, that's composed of a wealth of understory plants, tree species, insects, animals, birds, and fish that have fed, sheltered, and healed human inhabitants for millennia. I have been spending the past for almost 20 years now conducting ethnographic research with Central Appalachian communities, mostly focused on the socio-ecological impacts of fossil fuel extraction, particularly coal, on these communities. But one observation that has really stood out to me over the years is that despite the persistence of monolithic views of the region as only a coal extraction zone, most of the Central Appalachian people that I've interviewed and spent time with talk about their connection to the region in relation to the forests and the mountains, not to coal. The lives of Central Appalachian people have always been deeply entwined with and dependent on the Appalachian forest understory. Long before colonization, indigenous peoples used their traditional ecological knowledge to establish food and medicine forest gardens throughout the Appalachian Mountains, and they maintained relationships with many hundreds of plant species for food, medicine, and spiritual practices. Their knowledge of the natural environment was cultivated over thousands of years and was passed down orally from one generation to the next. And their descendants continue to steward wild populations of these plants today, such as the person who's pictured here, who is Victoria Ferguson of the Monacan Indian Nation, and one of my friends and colleagues. And in this photo here, she's shown sustainably harvesting ramps by only taking the leaves and part of the stem and leaving the bulb and the root system in the ground. As white settlers of European descent began to colonize the Appalachian Mountains in the 1700s, they established subsistence farms that relied heavily on the fruits, nuts, and greens that could be gathered from the forests. These pre-industrial settlers learned from American Indians how to identify and use the medicinal plants growing in the Appalachian forests and meadows, knowledge that was crucial in times in rural mountain communities where formally trained doctors were scarce. Many enslaved Appalachians of African descent developed deep connections to and maintained extensive knowledge about the medicinal properties of the herbs, roots, and tree barks growing in and around the nearby forests. Adapting herbal and spiritual traditions from their African homelands to the Appalachian environment, enslaved Appalachians created a distinct Afro-Latin herbalism that was crucially important during times of illness or injury, especially along the Underground Railroad routes that traversed the Appalachian Mountains. Many of these native Appalachian botanicals still feature prominently in Black herbal traditions today. And Central Appalachia's reliance on the forests actually predates the region's dependence on coal as an economic driver. For instance, American ginseng has been exported from Appalachia to China since the late 1700s, beginning a full century prior to the coal boom. According to Appalachian historian Luke Mangett, from the 1780s through the mid-1800s, ginseng was so important to the economy of rural Appalachia that mountain farmers used it as currency at country stores to buy the supplies and the household commodities that they needed for the year. The ginseng market also enabled American Indians, particularly the Iroquois and the Cherokee, to resist colonizers' early assimilation efforts, and they were able to retain their forest-based lifeways for a time through being involved in the ginseng trade. And even before there was a global trade in ginseng, many American Indian tribes used ginseng for medicine and in religious ceremonies. But ginseng isn't the only understory herb with deep roots in Appalachia's economy and traditions. Naturalist Judith Bolliard has identified about 90 plants that were commonly used in Appalachian folk healing traditions. And in the late 1800s, James Mooney reported that the Cherokee maintained relationships with hundreds of species of plants. By the mid-1800s, national markets for medicinal herbs from the Appalachian Mountains beyond ginseng began to emerge. Because at that time, many Americans had really become quite skeptical of mainstream medicine, which was still dominated by physicians who used treatments like bloodletting and purging and puking and blistering, and who prescribed toxic heavy metals, including mercury and lead and arsenic, as medicine. These treatments were not only ineffective, but they often made patients even sicker than they were to begin with. So as a result, botanically based indigenous and folk medicine came to be trusted more than many of the formally trained physicians were. And so here pictured are just a few. There was a movement that emerged during this time called the eclectics movement, and it was based in botanical medicine. And these are just a few pieces of a few things from that era. There were many, many botanical books that were printed during this time, botanical medical books, and then also, of course, there were a lot of things like Granny Metcalf's household helps, which was, botanically based medicines that were also sold. So by the mid 1800s, this popular demand for plant-based therapies fueled the creation of a significant market on the national level for Appalachian forest botanicals. This market continued to grow during the Civil War, particularly in the South, which was cut off from most commercial medicines, and so they really had to depend on the botanical knowledge that had been cultivated in by Native Americans and was passed to the white settlers. And so they really depended on these botanical medicines for treatment during the Civil War in the South. And so at this time, subsistence farmers and their families harvested dozens, or probably, close scores really, of plant species from the Appalachian forests. Some of those included lobelia, bloodroot, lady slipper, mayapple. And then they collected these roots and herbs and then bartered them at country stores, where then they were aggregated and shipped to markets in the northeastern United States. In his really fascinating book titled Ginseng Diggers, The History of Root and Herb Gathering in Appalachia, historian Luke Mangett included this really telling snapshot of the items that were bartered at one country store from 1872 to 1875. And I know you can't really read this very well, but the blue boxes that I've put on this figure indicate the products that were gathered from the Appalachian forests. And that those included wild ginger, sarsaparilla, sassafras, chestnuts, berries, boneset, lady slipper, ginseng, lobelia, berries, turkey pea, starroot, mayapple, and a category of miscellaneous roots and herbs. So you can see this is a pretty big proportion of the items that were bartered at this particular country store. And this was a pattern that you saw across a lot of central and southern Appalachia during this time period. And the harvesting of forest botanicals continues to play an important role in the lives of many contemporary Appalachians. For many residents, the cultural and social traditions associated with the harvesting, processing, and consumption of woodland-grown medicines and foods serve as a catalyst for deepening place attachment and community cohesion among those who take part in these social practices. Community ramp suppers, poke salad festivals, morel mushroom picnics, canning crazy greens, hulling walnuts, and gathering pawpaws are cultural traditions that often take place in community with others. Some of these events even serve as fundraisers for fire departments, schools, libraries, civic organizations, and churches, thereby supporting the spaces that facilitate networking, knowledge transfer, and mutual aid. And for some people, including the Collins family from Eastern Kentucky, forest botanicals form the basis of their entire livelihoods. The matriarch of this family, Carol, is a third-generation wild harvester who has been digging roots and gathering herbs since she was 11. Her grandparents raised 14 children entirely on income earned from digging ginseng and by growing food in their large garden. Carol's mother, Minerva, was still going to the mountains to dig ginseng when she was 86 years old. Carol, her husband Jerry, and her brother Donnie harvest roots, herbs, and barks full-time, year-round, and Carol and Jerry's adult kids also help some of the time. And while they have all worked other jobs at different points in their lives, wild harvesting has always provided crucial income for the Collins family to make ends meet, and it's work that they really enjoy doing. As Nathan, an herb buyer in Eastern Kentucky, told me during an interview, being able to choose a livelihood connected to the forests provides a lot of mental health benefits for some people. In an area where many jobs are physically and emotionally demanding, earning a living from the forest can provide a higher quality of life for many harvesters and herb buyers than many other jobs that are available. Recalling the 3 years that he spent working at a maximum security prison before he was involved in the herbal business, Nathan declared, "Oh my God, it was the worst days of my life. I've been on blood pressure medicine ever since that time, and it was just from the intensity of that work environment. The whole thing is just, to me, is like a blurred nightmare." Considering both his own experiences and those of the wild harvesters that he's met through his herbal business, Nathan reflected, "Some people can't function in certain systems, and the herbal industry is one that people who might otherwise be in that prison that I worked at, or if they aren't flourishing in other ways, can become self-sustaining, or at least have a good life just hanging out up in the mountains every day. And there's something there." There's also a growing movement of forest farmers in central Appalachia, people who are cultivating these medicinal herbs and forest foods on their own woodlots for both income and conservation purposes. So all of these stories, stretching from the historical stories to the present day stories of people's connections to the Appalachian forest understory, really paint, in my mind, a very different picture of what's of value in these mountains. So in 2023, I heard about the Monuments Across Appalachian Virginia grant opportunity through Virginia Tech professors Emily Satterwhite and Katie Powell, who received a $3 million grant from the Mellon Foundation that year to fund the creation of 8 to 9 new monuments telling untold stories and erased histories throughout Appalachian Virginia. And when I heard about this opportunity, I thought it could be a really wonderful project, a wonderful contribution to this, to create a monument to try to help change the narrative about Central Appalachia. A monument that would provide an alternative framing for the region beyond the coal fields, and that would celebrate the cultural and social and historical, ecological and economic significance of Southwest Virginia's native understory of herbs and foods. So I approached John Munsell, who's a forest extension professor at Virginia Tech and one of my collaborators, and also some folks at Appalachian Sustainable Development, which is a nonprofit organization based in Duffield, Virginia, that works to promote forest farming and wild stewardship of medicinal herbs. So I approached these folks to see if they might be interested in collaborating on a grant proposal with me for this monument, and they said sure. So we submitted our proposal and ended up being one of 4 projects that was chosen during the first round of funding in August of 2023. When we were awarded the funding, though, we didn't yet have our location confirmed, but I had a place that I really, really wanted it to be, which is Flag Rock Recreation Area, which is on High Knob Mountain in Norton, Virginia, in Wise County. And so Flag Rock, if you all haven't been there before, it's really just an amazing hidden gem. It's an incredible treasure in Wise County. It's a major hotspot for biodiversity in the state. Actually, all of High Knob is. So in May 2023, which is when I started scoping out potential sites to approach before we had written the grant, I was completely blown away by what I saw along the trails at Flag Rock. And Flag Rock Recreation Area is on High Knob, but it's actually a city park. Norton owns some of the land on High Knob, and so they created a park there that has a bunch of trails, amazing mountain bike trails and hiking trails, and it's just a really beautiful space. But anyway, I went with a student of mine, Lily Moore, and we scoped out a couple different sites in far Southwest Virginia. And again, we really wanted to site it there because it was really important for it to be in a so-called coal field community. And so that was one of the locations we went to, and it was end of May. And Virginia Tech has this really cool forest farming site assessment tool that uses geospatial data and also like soil data and rainfall data and the aspect of slope data and all this stuff, and puts it into this online tool. It's called PlantShoe, but it's basically a forest farming site assessment tool, and you can draw the outline of your property or a property, and it will run through all these data sources and spit out a report with a heat map for different parts of the property that would be ideal for forest botanicals, because a lot of these species grow in similar conditions, like on the north sides of slopes, where there's at certain elevations and things like that. And so it's able to kind of aggregate that data and kind of give you an idea of where might be a good spot. But not only does it tell you where would be a good spot to plant them, but it often ends up being that a lot of these botanical species are already growing there, and that's actually one of the best ways to tell if a certain species is going to do well, is if you see the companion species there, of course. So anyway, I ran the site assessment tool on the different places that we were scoping out that day, and so that's how I knew kind of which trails I was going to walk on to see what was there. And so anyway, so the trails that we went on were the Sugar Maple and the Twisted Forest trails. And I've never seen the concentration and diversity of plants as I saw on these trails, and I was just blown away. And there was this one particular spot, this one rich cove on the Twisted Forest Trail that was just like as far as the eye could see, wall to wall, black and blue cohosh, and it was just so dense and thick in there and lush. And anyway, I could go on and on about this, but it was an amazing like afternoon. And so I just like I was like it has to be here. The monument has to be here. And Flag Rock Recreation Area is also a green salamander sanctuary. It has one of the highest concentrations of salamanders in the state. And it is a wood booger sanctuary. Wood booger is the local Sasquatch, and they have a statue of the wood booger you can see on the map there at the top of the park. It was, I think it was in 2011, it was on the show Finding Bigfoot. And so the city council was very clever and funny, and they passed a resolution to make it a wood booger sanctuary too. And it's very cute. They have a whole plaque and everything up there. So anyway, I just really had my heart set on this location. And so that was May. August, we got the grant. Between May and August, I had been trying to reach the Norton City folks who work for the city, was having a hard time reaching them. They have a lot of outdoor festivals and things like that. So it took a lot of emails and phone calls, but finally I got the ear and interest of the city of Norton and presented the idea to the city council in December of 2023. And they were unanimously enthusiastic about the project and just loved the idea. And the trails coordinator, Shane Fields, who's really more like a trail sculptor, he sculpted these incredible trails all over the park. He was really into the idea. And so we assembled an advisory board and kind of started developing these three components of the monument. So the first is a story walk trail, which I'll talk about in a moment, but it's basically a series of interpretive signs along a couple of the trails of the park. And then an online exhibit, so folks who aren't able to travel there can still get the content of the Story Walk Trail, and then eventually it will be built out beyond the content that's on the Story Walk Trail. And then the third component is a sculpture, which is in progress, which hasn't happened. It's going to be installed in June. So after we got city council approval, we assembled a really amazing team of folks who have been helping make this vision a reality. So in addition to our core leadership team of the folks at Appalachian Sustainable Development and John and I from Virginia Tech, we also assembled an advisory board with Shane, the trails coordinator, the tourism director for the city of Norton, Katie Dunn, a member of the High Knob Master Naturalist, Beth Walker, and an ethnobotanist from UVA-Wise, Ryan Hewish. And then I enlisted the help of a number of content advisors and co-authors who had expertise in some of the themes that we wanted to include on the sign. So Vicki Ferguson from the Monacan Indian Nation and Nathan Bush from the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians, who is also one of our sculpture artists, they were content advisors on the sign about Indigenous stewardship of forest botanicals. And Nathan's mother, Oneida Bush, was our Cherokee language advisor. We wanted to include Cherokee words for some of the plants that we included on the signs because the monument is located in the traditional homelands of the Cherokee. And so Ruby Daniels was another person who was involved. She was our content advisor and co-author of the Black Herbal Traditions in Appalachia content, and she is an Appalachian, she calls herself an Appalachian forest farmer and herbalist, and she owns a business called Crazy Jane's Herbal Remedies. And then Ryan Hewish, who was the ethnobotanist I mentioned, he was a content advisor on the sign about animals' use of medicinal plants. And then Sean Bemis, who is also my husband, contributed geological knowledge and map making skills to help with our sign on the biodiversity of Central Appalachia, why this is such a biodiversity hotspot. And so So the Storywalk Trail component was completed in August of 2024, and it is a 2 mile wooded trail that was on a wooded trail that had already two trails, contiguous trails at the park that already existed. Um, but it's along this 2 mile trail is a series of interpretive signs that highlight the cultural, historical, medicinal, and economic importance that Appalachian forest botanicals have long held for a diversity of people and animals. And and I just blew up that middle part there that showed the themes of the 10 signs. So first there's a really large interpretive sign at the entrance to the Storywalk Trail. And then about, I don't know, 400 yards down the trail, the first sign is the Forest Botanicals region, a treasure of biodiversity. And again, that talks about why this is such a biodiversity hotspot, and it has to do with the last glacial maximum and also like that part of central and southern Appalachia uh, were not covered with the last ice sheet, and so a lot of the species that from the more northern regions were able to migrated over a very long period of time to the southern region, but because of the topography of the area, where you can have a lot of microclimates depending on which way the slope is facing and what the elevation is. Because of that, a lot of the species that are more northern based are able to still survive in the central and southern Appalachians, and then same with species that are found more in the southern regions. If it's a slope that's southern facing, then or western facing, then different species are going to survive there. So anyway, we go into some of that detail on that first sign. The second sign is about the multi-billion-dollar herbal products industry, talking about some of the stuff I talked about at the beginning of the talk, how this region really is kind of like the breadbasket of the herbal products industry. A lot of the material that you'll see in natural food stores and pharmacies, I mean, you'll see it on the food store, on the shelves of Eats Natural Food Store and Annie K's. A lot of that material is harvested from Central Appalachian forests. The third sign is about animals' use of medicinal plants. There are some species of cavity nesting birds, for instance, that line their nests with aromatic plant material, and that has actually been shown to reduce the prevalence of mites and other parasitic insects, and actually increases the survival rate of young birds. And also, interestingly, bears, when after hibernation, they have a huge amount of parasites in their systems, and so there are certain plants that they consume, like skunk cabbage, which is the pictures are kind of small, but is in this photo here or not photo, the artwork of a bear eating the skunk cabbage. But skunk cabbage has been shown to help bears clear the mucus plugs from hibernation. And then there are other greens that bears eat that help them expel tapeworms after they've been sitting in their digestive systems all winter. And then the fourth sign is about indigenous wisdom in the Appalachian forest, and includes some plants that both Vicky and Nathan wanted to include on this sign because of their importance to their traditions. The fifth sign is about Euro-American settlers' use of forest medicines and foods. The sixth sign is about Black herbal traditions in Appalachia. The seventh sign is about American ginseng, that history I was telling you all about a little while ago. Next sign is about the Appalachian botanical drug boom of the 1800s. And then the second to last sign is about protecting at-risk forest botanicals, some of the threats to these species, because most of the forest botanicals are very slow growing species because, of course, they're growing in the shade. And so many of them are at risk or threatened. And so what are some of the ways that we can protect those species? And then the last sign is about forest farming as a conservation strategy and income generating opportunity. And we just last month, actually a couple weeks ago, went back to the Norton City Council to ask permission to create a wild simulated forest garden at the end of the trail at this sign, to kind of be a demonstration for how you can do wild simulated plantings of some of these forest botanicals. And so we're planning to start work on that in the spring and and hopefully do planting in the fall. Um, so we held the opening celebration for the Story Walk Trail on Sunday, August 18th, 2024, which was during the City of Norton's week-long annual Outdoor Fest. And we had a really fantastic turnout, especially considering the fact that it rained and thundered off and on all day. Another thing, this region, this area gets a lot of annual rainfall, which is another reason on the sign that for the why it's such a hotspot, of course, is the high annual rainfall. But yeah, we saw that in action on the on the day of the opening celebration. But despite that, we still had a really great turnout. I think we didn't count people, but there were at least 65 people in attendance, so that was great. And so these are just some photos from the vendor pavilion that we had set up under one of the picnic shelters at the park. We had educational booths and folks selling herbal products and crafts and native plants. And we gave away native seeds. Nicole Hirsch from the Plant Southwest Virginia Natives campaign gave us some seeds to give away, which was really wonderful. And we also bought some American ginseng seeds from a forest farmer and gave those away, that was a huge hit, of course. And we gave away Southwest Virginia native plant guides and t-shirts and stickers, and so it was great. And then we also had a Storywalk Trail guided tour as part of the event. And so the trail sign authors, including Ruby Daniels, Victoria Ferguson, Ryan Hewish, and myself, led the tour and discussed the 10 signs. And we had about 30 people on that hike. And so it was a really great crowd. And the VT News made a little video about the day, and I'll come back to this. I'm just worried about, I have to go out of the presentation and come back in order to show it, but I'll show it at the end. And then in addition to the Storywalk Trail, we have also created an online exhibit, which is still a work in progress, because it's one of the living elements of the project. But right now, what's on there, most of what's on there, there's a little bit more than what's on the signs, but all of the content from the signs is in this exhibit. So you can see on the right there, when you go to the exhibit and you click on the links, it'll take you to the content for each of the signs. So my students and I have been working on providing some additional content that we're going to be adding to this, including additional research and some historical documents and historical botanical illustrations of many of the plants that are featured, references. And in the future, we also hope to include some links to videos and audio files from interviews that I've been conducting with folks. And then the last component of the monument is a sculpture, which will be unveiled at another celebration that we're going to hold in Norton on June 7th of this year. So you all are welcome to come if you're interested. The sculpture artist team is Nathan Bush from the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians and William Rogers. And they both live in North Carolina and have been working to revitalize Cherokee coppercraft. So prior to colonization, the Cherokee mined copper and made all kinds of tools and vessels and some artwork. And so the site of, I think I mentioned before, the site of the Forest Botanicals Region Living Monument, Norton and Wise County, are located in the traditional homelands of the Cherokee. So we actually did a juried, well, not really a juried, we sent out an RFA, a request for applications for sculpture artist teams, and you know, did a little kind of searching around to invite people to apply as well. And we were just so excited when we saw this application from these two because, you know, like it just felt like having that Cherokee history be able to be told as part of this monument would just make it even more special. And so anyway, as I think I mentioned before, also Nathan, or maybe I didn't mention this, Nathan is also a medicinal plant expert. And so he and his mother is a renowned Cherokee medicine woman. And so having that dimension to it too is just so special. It just felt like, all the stars aligning, and it was just really beautiful. So they've been really great to work with, and we're just really excited about the sculpture. So these are some photos of some of their previous work on the right. This Both of these are at the Cherokee Indian Hospital. And then the picture on the left that has Nathan's on the left and William is on the right. That is the frame for our sculpture. And they're working right now on making 4 copper panels that will go in those kind of top triangular areas. And each one of those panels will have a different native Appalachian plant, and so medicinal plant or food plant. So the first panel will be a Solomon seal plant. The second one will be a ramp plant. The third will be Jack in the Pulpit, and the fourth will be dogwood. And these are plants. I asked Nathan to choose the ones that he wanted to have represented. And so he chose these because these were, they're native plants, but they're also important to his tradition. And I knew ramps were important, and and Solomon seal, I didn't realize is also a food, and they eat it as an early spring green, and also you can eat the root. The dogwood bark, I didn't know this until Nathan told me, but dogwood he really wanted that to be part of this because it was used as a fever reducer during the smallpox epidemic of the 1700s that wiped out such a huge percentage of the Cherokee population. And it was one of the few things that worked for some people, that helped save some Cherokee people's lives. And so that plant is very important. And I didn't know that history. And so that also just is really neat to have that history be shared and part of this. So anyway, that again, the sculpture unveiling will be on June 7th. We're working right now on the schedule of events for that. We'll probably also do another trail walk of the Story Walk Trail, and have vendors as well for that. So in creating this living monument, what we're really hoping to do is to educate people on how the treasure below the forest canopy is one that has, for a very long time, been tied to the lifeways and livelihoods and traditions of many different Appalachian people, stretching from pre-colonization to today. Because, the importance of this is tied to our belief that valuing the forest understory, which is the bounty above the coal, is necessary for envisioning and enacting a more ecologically sustainable future for Central Appalachia. So through creating this living monument to the Forest Botanicals region, we're hoping to really infuse a new narrative about the region into the public imagination, and also deepen place attachment and pride among local residents for this amazing biodiversity that they have in their home. Okay, so I've said I would go back to this, and I'm going to try to see if I'm going to have to go out and then reshare my screen. Sound. All right. I'm screen sharing, but I don't know if you, okay. All right, somebody yell at me if you can't see this. I'm going to start it now.
Today is the opening celebration for the Forest Botanicals Region Living Monuments Story Walk Trail, which is a series of 10 interpretive signs placed along a 2-mile loop at Flag Rock Recreation Area in Norton, Virginia. The monument is offered as an alternative way of thinking about this region, because this is one of the most biodiverse places on the planet. And the forest herbs and the wild foods that grow in the Appalachian woodland forest understory have sustained societies for millennia.
Everything you would need to survive, you could get from this forest.
Indigenous peoples have long tended herbs and have had relationships with hundreds of plant species and are still stewarding those populations today. Enslaved people of African descent used many of these herbs and learned how to use these herbs medicinally to treat illness, especially on the Underground Railroad routes to freedom. Many people living in Appalachia today harvest medicinal herbs as supplemental income. Many people in Appalachia grow these herbs. I hope that people who walk this nature trail and people who visit the online exhibit, I hope that they will see all of the biodiversity and the treasure that exists in Central Appalachia. This is also an opportunity for people who live in this region to hopefully be able to share in that celebration of cultural traditions and history. We hope that other places throughout Central Appalachia will want to, do something similar to celebrate this treasure of biodiversity that exists in the Appalachian forests.
Okay, were you all able, hopefully you were able to see that. So that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions you all might have, and hope you'll come and visit.
Congratulations. It's a fantastic project.
Thank you. It's been a real joy. It's like seriously been, I think, the highlight of my entire career. It's been amazing.
Son on Norton.
William Rogers used to live around here. We have some of his work.
Oh my gosh, yes. And his wife Anna,
Yes.
she
Yeah.
used to teach, right, at Tech and at
She has
Radford.
she
Yeah.
has artwork at the hospital in Radford, and also she helped with original working on CI too. They were, yeah.
Yeah, the interpretive signs there. Yeah, I went and visited them. When did I go? In June, because I wanted to kind of, just see what the workshop looked like and do a little videoing and stuff like that. And she's also done a lot of interpretive signs there in Cherokee and and where they live in Colway as well. And so, yeah, no, it's been wonderful getting to know them. That was just yeah, I hadn't met her before, and so yeah, both of them have.
And a few years ago, the Virginia Native Plant Society had these field trips you could sign up for, and you go for a couple days. And we went to far Southwest Virginia, Clinch Valley, all around. And the thing that struck me the most was we went in the spring, early spring, and like you said, it was just carpeted with things blooming, and there was no place to walk without. It was that's what that used to look like, and it's just really shocking to see that. Yeah. Thanks. This was wonderful.
Thank you. Yeah, and just to say another few words about William Rogers, one of the sculpture artists. So since they moved to North Carolina, he has been, he does all kinds of workshops, and really did a lot of research on Cherokee copper mining and copper art, and it's just really neat because Nathan was one of his students. So William did a bunch of workshops with youth and with adults on Eastern Band of Cherokee folks to teach them coppercraft, and now some of them have been juried into the artist collective in Cherokee, and so they're just and they are now doing workshops for youth, for Cherokee youth as well. And so it's just been really neat to see the ripple effect that has had in that community, and so yeah, it's really neat.
I grew up in Norton.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, And I think I was in Norton last August, but I didn't know about this trail when I was there. And I was actually up on I went all the way to High Knob Lake. I bypassed Flag Rock. But if I had known, I would have certainly gone. But I think it seems like it's a really good addition to that area up there. And I'm hoping to be able to make it down on June 7th then
Hope you do.
to see what you
Yeah.
all have done. It's awesome.
That would be great. Oh, that's so cool. You grew up in Norton. It's like my new favorite place. Seriously. It's like also the most adorable town. And like
Um, it used to be a lot more adorable.
really? I just
Yeah,
think
it's really
lovely.
not what it used to be.
Well, there's like this sweet little coffee shop there that I love to go and hang out at, Lincoln
Oh, and the
Road.
Woodbugger Cafe. You
And the
have to eat
Woodbugger
lunch at the
Cafe is
Woodbugger
there. And there's just,
Cafe,
yeah, there's
but
I
or
just I
Woodbugger
just
Grill, sorry.
yeah.
But
Yeah. No, I love that town. I just want to spend more time there and like it's the cutest
well,
thing.
now that they have a hotel in
Yes.
town, then
Yes.
that'll make it a lot easier too.
Yeah. And it is a really nice hotel.
It
So
is.
yeah. Yeah. And the park is so lovely. And we had some of our friends camped when we did the opening celebration, I had to stay in the hotel with my family because, you know, just all the logistics and stuff. But some of our friends came from Blacksburg and they camped. And the campground is also just really
Oh,
awesome. It's
really?
like got showers and it's
Wow.
never full. There's always, and all of the campsites have this incredible view of the mountains. Like it is an amazing little hidden secret. And then, and I just learned, and so, and there's a reservoir there, you know, and so my husband took my kids fishing and like, yeah, it's great. You all
Yeah, yeah.
definitely should go spend a weekend there. That's
Oh,
really cool to know
I'll see
somebody
if
who's
I
from
can make
there.
it back. Like I said, it's been a while since I've been back there. I was back there in August. But, you know, we never camped up there because we lived basically at the foot of the mountain, so we
Okay.
never camped.
Yeah. Yeah. No,
So
that makes
Shannon, is that June 7th date when the community has their festival? Or is that special for you?
no, so the festival that was in August, is that what you mean?
Okay, right.
That one we did. Like we'll do another. So we did that as part of the week-long outdoor fest. So that's just like a different thing, and they have that every August. So our event in June on June 7th will be a standalone thing. Um, and it's going to be at the High Knob Destination Center. That's another really cool thing. They got the city of Norton got a grant from the Appalachian Regional Commission a couple years ago to build a destination center that's for the whole High Knob region, and it's an incredible building. I mean, it looks like a national park building. It's beautiful and has all these gorgeous interpretive signs, and they just opened it to the public, I think about a month ago. And so they're going to have their like grand opening event. I think it's April 25th, but the sculpture is going to be installed in the backyard of that destination center. So that's actually where the event will be held. And that's at the foot of High Knob Mountain.
But it
Just like,
sounds like we should be making a field trip
yeah,
as a
you should.
chapter
You
to
should.
to this place. I'm all enthused.
I agree.
That sounds great.
I can give you great directions how to get there.
I know, I can
Who's,
I can
who's gonna
find
get
you,
the room
Mary.
blocks? Who's gonna get the room block?
And you all can meet, like I said, you can meet up with the High Knob master naturalists and have a little like
Oh, that'd be fun too.
exchange.
Oh,
That'd be great. There
okay,
is
we'll
one
work on that.
question. There's
Oh
one
yeah.
question in the chat. They want to know how they can learn more about the identification of native foods and herbs locally.
So there's a really great book. I actually just pulled it out today because somebody else was asking about it. So this I mean, I'm sure you all know about this, the Peterson's Field Guide books. There's one that's on medicinal plants and herbs of the Eastern and Central North America. And this book, I've been impressed because it even gives some of the historical and indigenous uses of these plants that may not be, you know, used in that way popularly today, but I just love that it's got that the roots of that knowledge is acknowledged in this book. So that's kind of like my go-to source. And I'm trying to think of other good resources off the top of my head.
Gwyneth made a suggestion in the chat. See if you recognize her book.
Very good.
Are you there, Gwyneth?
Look at, there are a number of written resources. Oh, okay. Oh yeah, Shosh. Yeah, so local folks in Blacksburg have so For the Love of Foraging is a neat little zine that that a local Blacksburg resident created. I don't know where you can get that. Gwen, do you know where it's available?
I got mine. They were at a little craft fair, but I think they might have copies at Eats Natural Foods. Eats
Okay.
has a shelf of they have work by local authors and also just general stuff about health and plants and foraging. There also are some books about like Southeast foraging and things like that. That might be some, but that isn't as specific. The reason I suggested this and Lauren Cooper's work is because those are specific to this area and not the whole Southeast United States.
That book is a Gwen- Blacksburg book. Blacksburg Books carries that
Oh,
book.
good.
Yeah.
Cool.
And there's always Stalking the Wild Asparagus by Ewell Gibbons.
And one of my, and this isn't on our website yet, but one of my students last semester, or actually two of my students, they did it in the class together. Bryce Burrell and Alex. Oh my gosh, I am blanking on his last name because I was trying to say it too quickly. But they, for their final project for my class, did a mapping project of Virginia Tech's campus of all of the trees, like where you can harvest the right acorns for making acorn bread, and they included a recipe for the acorn bread, the indigenous acorn bread, and then they had a number of other plants and they mapped them. And so this will be part of the online exhibit where we're working on going through and sort of editing all the resources my students made last semester that were going to be incorporated into the exhibit. But so yeah, there's some neat, I'll let you all know when that's up as well. And then Lauren Cooper is also you probably see her herbal products at Eats as well. And so a medicinal plant expert herbalist in Blacksburg as well. So
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Bryce because I know that they're doing some food and forest foraging out at the Turfgrass Center.
Yeah.
As part of the Indigenous Garden. So yeah, so that's a great idea, Bryce. And Lauren too. Yeah, she took me around many years ago.
Oh, cool.
For a story and for a newspaper story. And
oh, nice.
Yeah, so
that's awesome.
I think it would be very cool, Liz and Barb, if we got Lauren to give us a field experience.
Oh, that would be really cool. Please tell me when this is.
I wrote it down already, Tanya.
There you go. I was going to say, put it on the list.
Good. Get it on the list. Thank you.
And the other student who did the project with Bryce is Alex Dyer. So Dyer. I just wanted to mention that since I had the brain thing that happened.
That was inspiring, Shannon. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
Feel
really
free to.
enjoyed it.
Yes, thank you very much.
So interesting.
Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or if you need directions to Norton. Or you can ask Mary, it seems.
Not too hard.
I'm on it. I can get there from my house to Norton in under 2.5 hours.
Oh, cool. Amy Nelson also put another resource in there. Appalachian Foragers it has a book coming out. Cool.
I don't think it's out. I follow her on Instagram. I don't think the book is out yet, but the stuff she posts on Instagram is amazing. Like from like how to process pawpaws, which like have you ever tried to process pawpaws? It's really hard, She's really cool. So I'm looking forward to seeing that book when it lands.
Awesome.
This was so great, Shannon. Thank you so much. It was really
You're
cool.
welcome. I also wanted to say, if any of you are interested in forest farming or forest gardening. I do forest gardening. I don't have a farm because I'm not selling stuff, but there's a really wonderful, so Virginia Tech leads this Appalachian Forest Farmer Coalition. And if you just Google that and go to the website, there are so many resources and videos about growing some of these really special plants. And so they can be, and I've been growing ginseng and ramps and a number of other, and golden seal just outside in our woods here. And so like here in Blacksburg, you can, it's a little drier, but if you get the right, if you have a north facing slope or in an area that's a little bit wetter, then they'll do fine. So I'd recommend checking out those resources too, if you're interested.
Janet?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Maggie. I have a question about deer. What do deer eat these?
Yeah, so deer are a problem. Well, first, deer don't like ramps, so that's at least you can get your ramps and keep them. But with ginseng and even golden seal, which is so bitter, I just can't believe the deer are eating it, but they are. What I've been doing is, okay, if you really want to do it, like get a deer fence. But if you are low budget, and I live in a co-housing community, and so I can't just erect fences all over our woods. Like I have to go through process and stuff like that. But what I do is something that I learned from a forest farmer called brushing in, where basically I just I make stick cages around my plantings. And when I'm planting ginseng seeds, I kind of I just get a bunch of brush and sticks that have a lot of branches on them, and just kind of lay them over where the seeds are to protect the seedlings. Because if ginseng takes about 5 to 6 years to reach maturity, and if in the first year or two the leaves get eaten, it's not going to come back. But if after a few years the leaves get eaten partway through the season, it's fine and it'll still come back. So you especially want to make sure you protect the early growth. But yeah, so when the ginseng starts coming up, in May, I just go around and I just start building little cages around the individual plants, and I have to go back through the season because with storms and stuff things get blown over, but I just kind of pile sticks to protect them as much as I can, and then about half of them still get eaten by the deer, but by August, so I don't dig the roots. I leave the roots and I just harvest the leaves, because you can make ginseng tea. The leaves still have the same ginsenosides as the roots do. And so if the plant makes it to August, before they start turning yellow, you can go through and harvest all the leaves and dry them and use them that way. And then and by that point also, if there's berries, the berries will be mature and you can spread the berries around, or grow them and, process them and grow little seedlings again.
Great.
So that's what I do. Any other questions?
I think that's it.
All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you
Great
very
to meet
much.
you. Someday I want to be a master naturalist. I don't have time yet, but that's my dream one day. So thanks for all you do.
You will notice the color of a lot of our hair. So it isn't something you do when you're super young and working on your career, although we do have people doing that.
Yeah, I see. I'm impressed with those people. Well, thank you again.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Have
Bye.
a good evening.
You too.
Okay, I only have a few things to cover, and then we can all go back to whatever we still need to do. I'm very happy to see as many of you as we had this evening, because I know people don't have power, don't have internet. There's been all kinds of problems. So I appreciate your coming this evening. There were a few things people asked me to mention. We have a field trip coming up on the 2nd for tree ID. In fact, most of the stuff that I'm going to mention right now, you can find in Meetup. And if you haven't signed up for Meetup, please do that. I mean, yes, things are going to be on the Better Impact calendar. The drawback to that is if there's any changes, you don't get the immediate updates that you would get if you were signed up and signed on to a project through Meetup. So there's any kind of schedule change or anything going on with Meetup, if it's canceled, you're going to hear about it right away. So sign up for Meetup, please. So the second, we have a tree ID field trip. And on the 15th, I hope you're all planning to come to join us at the Claytor Lake event on the 15th. Oh, what else? I think that's pretty much it. Just so you know, we've got people working very hard on getting grants. We've got some mini grants coming up for to help with educational supplies. We have people working on an equity pilot project that the state has going on. We'll update you on that when we hear more about that. What else? I think Sandy wanted to talk to everybody about the Bluebird project. Sandy, you still with us?
Yes, I am. Before I talk about the bluebirds, I just want to mention a few things about putting your hours into better impact. I want to let you know that if you have a multi-day activity like feeder watch is always 2 days, or the Great Backyard Bird Count is a 4-day event, or
Get
if you
to
go to a
count that? Oh, that's good.
yes, or if you go to a conference. I mean, you can't. It's not 24 hours that you accumulate, but whatever time you spent, you can pick one day, and then in the description say, like I always will say, I'll put the date, say February 15th, and then in description say feeder watch 2 days. So it just mentioned that it was a 2-day project. So that will maybe make it easier for some of you entering your hours. We added into the drop-down menu when it asks for location, we added virtual. So if you did something that was just online, you can just tag it as virtual. The location is used by Brenda when she does the annual report, and that will keep things tidy and accurate. And one more time, I'm just going to review. If you're asked for contacts, contacts are people that you came in contact with either because you were doing an educational activity or incidentally in the course of another activity. For example, when I'm out doing bluebirds on one of the golf courses, people will stop me and ask me about it. So I can put them as a contact. We only want to count contacts if, say, you're doing a tabling event and there's a group leader. We only want to count contacts one time unless several of you are talking about different aspects. So if you're doing a project at Claytor Lake and 4 people are leading a group and one does a topic about one thing and then somebody else talks about something else, then you can count the contacts several times. But if it's one group of 20 people and they're all doing tree ID, only count those 20 people one time. So the group leader should add the contacts and the other people don't. So that's all I want to talk about. I'll probably write this all out and send it around to everybody because I know everyone's not here. So we do project of the month. We just try to highlight a certain project that our chapter is involved with. And I just want you to get ready for bluebirds. Many of you have participated in the bluebird trails. But if you're new to it, if you're new to our group, if you've not done bluebirds before, even if you're not new to the group, we'd love to have you. There are a few ways you can do bluebirds, but I want to talk specifically about the high school trails. We have a trail at the Blacksburg High School, a very small trail at the middle school, and another small trail at Price's Fork Elementary. On March 22nd, it's a Saturday at noon. We'll meet at the middle school and we'll spend about an hour talking about how to monitor bluebirds if you've not done it before, and going over nest watch, because we enter our data in a mobile app. It's both a mobile app or you can access it on your computer. But if you're out in the field, you'll want to have it on your phone. And even if you've done bluebirds before, every year we learn a little bit more about any glitches that Feeder Watch has, or different ways to use it. So, and improve our use of it. It's pretty simple to use, but if you'd like to come, we'd love to have you. We monitor those trails only on weekends because that's when the public's allowed on school property. And we use a Sign Up Genius app to sign up. You can do it for one weekend, or you can pick a weekend every month. You can pick a few weekends in a row. Usually people go out in pairs. You don't have to. I find that the middle school trail and the elementary school, we pair them together. They take about an hour to do. The high school trails we've divided in half, and you can sign up to do both halves or just half the trail. If you've done it before and got discouraged because there was really high grass, Pete Madsen has been mowing and weed whacking around the boxes for us. So this past year, it was much better and easier to access the boxes. I'm almost always available by phone if you come up with a problem while you're monitoring. But we'd love to have you. We always need volunteers. So please come out. If you can't come that day for some reason, get in touch with me and I'd be glad to take you out one day, the first day I monitor. What we'll do that kickoff day is spend about an hour by the boxes, learning how to monitor and using Nest Watch. And then we'll show people who've not been to the trails before where the boxes are, and spiff them up. A lot of times the numbering needs to be fixed, wears off over the winter, and make sure all the boxes are ready. Usually typically we say nesting starts April 1st, but the last year it was a little earlier because of the weather, actually quite a bit earlier, maybe 10 days earlier, there was beginning of a nest. Anyway, we'd love to have you. Please contact me if you have any questions. That's it.
Thank you.
Could I ask a question? One question and one item for discussion, or just to ask for some help. One is, I know this is going to sound silly, but new member. So we just heard this great hour of information about this project. Does that count as in-service training?
Yes, that is continuing ed, and I haven't actually looked at the calendar, but it should have been entered. You can go to hours, find chapter meeting, February, and you have 1 hour. By the way, I'll just point out the chapter meeting itself is not CE, continuing ed, but that 1 hour presentation is.
Okay,
So you would put it in for 1 hour of continuing ed.
All right, so I have some catching up to do.
Yes.
The second thing is I was talking with the director of the library at Radford Public Library, and she said she would be very interested in having some naturalist presentations that would be geared to families and children. And I know a lot of you live in the Blacksburg area, but she mentioned that there was someone who lived in Pulaski County who was also interested in doing this. So one, I wondered if that was anybody who's here, and also if there was anybody who would be interested in working with me to do a couple programs for the Radford Public Library.
For the public library or the RU?
The public library.
Yeah, we have done presentations there before.
Okay, so they're
Oh.
interested, and I
If
said,
if they had a topic in mind, they can let us know. We can line them up with someone.
well, she and I were talking, and I said I could do some. So I just wondered if there was anybody who wanted to join me. That's all. Y'all think about it, and you can always contact me.
Would that be Dana Card?
Maybe. Just yeah, that's right.
Dana
I'll
lives in
contact
Dana
Dana.
lives in Pulaski.
Okay, I'll contact Dana. That's great.
Yeah,
Liz, I just wanted
we've done birding, different levels of birding presentations, and the reptile program.
Yeah.
Judy, has there been something else that we've done out there, another topic? Maybe Judy's not here anymore.
Has bears been done there?
I don't remember. I know I have not done, well, we didn't do it at the library. We did it at a festival or something that they had there.
That was a scouting event, I think.
Yeah, yeah, we do a scouting event.
I would like to do the bear program out there.
Oh, cool. All right. Who was that who said that?
Judy.
Judy. Uh-oh.
I was going to mention, Liz, I was going to mention that, so on Meetup, everybody here who signed up for Meetup, and when you do sign up, I've made it so anybody can create an event. So if you decide, okay, I'm going to pick this Saturday, I'm going to do this presentation on whatever it is, you can ask, you can create, everybody who's on Meetup can create an event. You can put it out there and say, hey, I need a couple people to help me with this, sign up here. So if you're interested, just when you do get a schedule going, that way other people could join you and know when it is.
Okay, excellent. Yeah. I have the app on. I'm out in Meetup, but I haven't yet connected my Meetup account and my Meetup app. So I'll work on that.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's going to be like a little bit of a learning curve for everybody, but I think it's really going to help us organize these kinds of things. So, yeah.
Okay, great.
I'd like to add one more thing about the meetup, which is when you put the location in, for whatever reason, it locates it miles from where it actually is. So then you have to do several iterations of poking and dragging the flag until you get it where it actually is taking place, just so you know.
Actually, it's not dragging the flag. That was the problem. You have to actually move the map so that where you want people to be is under the flag, if that makes any sense. It doesn't work like any other app as far as trying to get that pin where you want it to be.
But my point was that the automatic location factor is broken.
Yes, it is. That's true.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I created the high school, the Bluebird kickoff, it insisted that Blacksburg Middle School was in Christiansburg.
It was insisting Claytor Lake is in the middle of Dublin.
Yeah.
A little bit off. Yeah, thank you, Bruce. That's a good thing to know, because when I set up the Claytor Lake thing for March, I did not notice that the map was so far off. I just assumed that it's a Google map, so of course it was correct, but no, it was not.
So maybe what we should learn from this is just to make sure that you put in the description where the actual meeting place is, in case the map looks crazy. So, yeah.
Anybody have anything else? I guess we're done for this evening. I appreciate everybody coming. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.